What's going on, Brazil? Now, look, I recognize that a lot of people need to use the headsets here for me. I'm from New York. I talk fast. I move fast. I'm going to keep it slow. It could be because I ate a lot of steak here last night. I'm a little slow from that one as well. But it's all worth it. Now, I'm excited to be here today. I appreciate the invitation. This facility is amazing. The crowd's amazing. It's coming back together post-pandemic and seeing each other and looking at the payment ecosystem to say, how do we understand things better? How do we work together? Now, when I was invited down here, it was a few months ago, and at first I thought they were asking me to speak about, what the future of crypto would be. I got scared, and that wasn't planned, I promise you, but we are gonna have sound cues throughout the afternoon. Now, they asked me about that. Do I want to talk about the future of crypto? And my typical joke would be, if I knew the future of crypto, I'd be with SBF in the Bahamas, hanging out at his compound. That doesn't work very well right now. So what I wanted to do instead was talk about here what we've seen, what we've been seeing in the industry, what we see statistically, what we're seeing going on globally, and then talk a little bit about what that means for the future. Because right now we're at, I don't want to say an inflection point, but we are at a moment in time where it's making decisions about how that impacts the future of the crypto, the blockchain ecosystem, and how that plays into the traditional financial markets. Now, a lot of times you see people talking about TradFi and DeFi. You talk about a shadow economy, a separate ecosystem, but crypto is simply part of the financial ecosystem. It is an area that has seen dramatic changes in the last 14 years. So as we're talking about where it's going, I don't think we can ignore what it is or what it can be. If you look at 1 year ago, the crypto market cap was at $2.1 trillion. The daily trading volume was about $113 billion. Now, if you look at that, those are massive numbers. Then everything that goes wrong, we see the bear market. I'm not going to use the crypto W word. I don't like that. I don't think that's the thing. It's simply a bear market. If you look at the existence of crypto in the last 14 years, you see the rise and fall. You see it precipitate about different events occurring. Now, inside of that, we had a collapse to a certain extent. The market cap dropped to something like $700 billion. Daily trading volume was down to $13 billion. Everybody was saying it's a Ponzi scheme, it's going away. Fast forward to today. Bitcoin crossed $28,000. Crypto market cap is 1.2 trillion. Daily trading volume is 55 billion. Now you start to extrapolate that out. You are now talking about 18 to 36 trillion dollars of flow every year. So if we're sitting there in the payment ecosystem, we have to be involved with that. We have to participate in some way. Now I will say the Brazilian ecosystem further ahead than others, and I appreciate that. I think what you've done down here is have a vibrant, creative ecosystem open for innovation and change. Yet at the same time, as we're looking across it, we're trying to make sure it's safe. We're trying to make sure it's secure. Because to do that, to truly bring it into the fold, is going to be that interesting proposition about what the future looks like. Now, let's go into numbers. The screen works. So I do think it's important to talk about what we've actually seen in the ecosystem. So we talk about that 887% growth over the last few years about crypto transactions. This is what Mastercard sees on our network. That is what we see in our switch transactions and cross-border transactions. You're seeing the amount of different types of cryptocurrencies that are out there. You're seeing the volume. Now at the same time, you start to look at some of these statistics. You look about the wallets and how they're increasing, the amount of use, the utility, the idea that from 18 to 34-year-olds, 70% of them around the world say that they participated in a crypto transaction or they want to hold cryptocurrency in some way. Now, when we start digging in a little bit deeper, you look about the area of involvement. And if we look at that from our traditional financial ecosystem, whether you're an issuing bank or an acquirer, you're saying, all right, I understand that my customers want to participate in the space. What does that mean? What's the utility? And we're not there yet. I think we're working to get there about what that can be. And we'll talk about what some of those opportunities may be. But it's simply that people are voting with their paychecks. And they're taking their deposits and they're putting them in places where they're able to access the crypto and the blockchain ecosystem. Now there's a downside, there's a risk in all of this as well. And I don't think we can ignore that. You have to look at fraud, what we see in the Mastercard ecosystem, that any crypto transaction has 4 times higher fraud than anywhere else. Now, what digs into that? What is actually going on? It is a lot of times the KYC and AML controls on the exchanges that the different players are doing business with. 50% of them do not have proper KYC and AML controls around the world. We track about 8,000 of them total. We have good data and attribution on them, and we actually go in and validate what they do from a KYC component and an AML component. And when you don't have good controls there, that's where those fraud rates start to spike. I didn't bring all the stats with me, but we see in certain parts of the world, certain banks, they're seeing up to 1,300 bips of fraud a month on these transactions. And they're trying to figure out what's going on. Now, you see that we're talking about risks, and you see these big numbers, and you see the fact that there have been hacks and ransomware attacks of billions and billions of dollars. They're going on all over the place. So why? Why else should I be involved? What's the benefit? I'm showing you that there's an opportunity. I'm also showing you pain points. But I think it's also important to understand what that means in terms of opportunity. If people want to play in this space, how do you facilitate? What else do you do? So in Brazil, we were looking at our statistics that we saw. The approval rate of transactions using a Mastercard payment product is 39%. 39% across the entire Brazilian ecosystem. If you ask why that's happening, a lot of times, it's blanket policy declines. It's that they don't have enough controls in place to understand what's going on, so they decline it. So we've seen just on the transactions that have a flag in them, in the auth message, about $4 billion of just declined transactions. So now what if we step back and we look and we work together to understand why are you declining those transactions? Now from a Mastercard level, for every issuing bank around the world, we look at every single crypto transaction that we track and the counterparty risk to understand what's actually occurring in your ecosystem. What are your customers doing with a Mastercard payment product? So with that, as we look at it and we see these declines, we can work with understanding how to improve those. So even if you optimize that 10%, that is $400 million of GDV that gets put back into the ecosystem. That is not a small amount of money. You start extrapolating that out to what the ecosystem could be. And as it grows again, that is real dollars in the pocket. That is the real opportunity in front of you. Now, I say all that, and we can't ignore the 800-pound elephant in the room. I'm not sure the proper euphemism for Brazil in this sense, but regulatory action. Regulators around the world. Again, a couple months ago, this was a much easier conversation, but then we have the SEC in the United States, the DOJ, the CFTC, Europol, the European Union. There are lawsuits and regulatory actions around the world. There are people trying to take what as its essence is a borderless, permissionless ecosystem, and they're imposing controls. And it's not a wrong thing at all. At the end of the day, if we're talking about payments, we have to talk about what's impacted at the end user. How are they safe? How are they secure? I always go back to, I give this example that if my mother called me up one day and she said, Jonathan, I just bought $5,000 worth of Dogecoin, would I feel good about that? The answer is no. I would not feel good. I'd say, Mom, where did you buy it? What website did she use? I was like, no, you shouldn't have gone to cryptoponzi.com. That wasn't the right answer for you. But it's this idea that if she called me up and she said, Jonathan, I just bought $5,000 of Mastercard stock, I'd say thank you as a shareholder, but I wouldn't question it. I'd be good at that point. Now, why? I don't know where she bought it from. I don't know what website she went to. I don't know if she was at Charles Schwab, Morgan Stanley, some other broker, but I know enough about it, and I know that there's enough controls in place that it's safe in some way. The only way the crypto and the blockchain ecosystem fully becomes integrated and accepted and part of the day-to-day is that when your parent calls you up, a grandparent, your crazy Uncle Jim, and they say that they did this, you're not gonna blink an eye. You're gonna say, okay, I've got it. You purchased that crypto, go forth and conquer. But we're not there yet. So what you're seeing around the world from these regulatory actions, from legislative bodies, from any government around the world, an executive order, a presidential decree, they're looking at means to bring this into the normal ecosystem, to have rails, safeguards in place so people can understand it and interact in a safe and secure manner, while also being able to take care of those people who don't know better. Because the downside of this as well, when you look at the fraud, you look at scams, they happen. They're happening across the board. I know statistically in the United Kingdom, all the ACH and the account-to-account traffic, all the scams and fraud, 60% of it ends up in crypto. So when you see that happening, those numbers getting replayed here probably with PIX in Brazil. I know we're concerned about that banked in the Philippines. Any other new system of ACH account-to-account, that real-time payment rails, you have to watch out for it if you have to protect it. So regulators and governments around the world are now coming up with propositions to bring that into the fold. Now look, I'm not going to say whether somebody's right or wrong. I think governments are looking out for what's best for their citizens in some senses. What they're also trying to do is understand and control the proposition so they can make sense of it. Now, if you start to step back, where does this go in that area? What is the end state? I'm a pragmatist about this. I don't necessarily think it's going to be the Bitcoin maximalists are going to win. I don't think it's going to be a wholesale and resale CBDC. But if you look what's out there, if you read the tea leaves, the Bank of International Settlements put out a paper, the president, gave a speech a couple weeks ago, talking about having a unified global digital ledger. That obviously is not going to work. But as you read into the comments, it's talking about that happening at your financial institutions. It's talking about that happening at traditional banks, or those players who are operating in a fully regulated way, because they think that's where it should be funneled, where it should be safe. If you look at a lot of the actions that just happened in the United States, now there's different things that occur, with Silvergate Bank going down, and then SVB going down, and then Signature Bank being seized by the New York regulator. It was this idea of how do we start funneling control and risk in a way people can understand. Now, whether you agree with that or not, I'm not here to do that at all. I'm representing Mastercard, personal opinions on the side for coffee. It is the idea, how do you play in that space? How do you take advantage of the opportunity? How do you build in that ecosystem? That's where it becomes really important. That's where it becomes time to step back and say, how am I operating locally? How do I start operating globally? And this is a bit of the conundrum in this space, because crypto and the blockchain ecosystem at its core is borderless. It is meant to operate anywhere, all at once. I was going to say everything, everywhere, all at once, but that becomes a weird Oscars reference now from a movie. But it is an idea that it has to happen 24/7, 365. That's the essence of what this is. And now you're trying to put it in this box. So how do you start moving from a globalist economy to localization? How do you prepare? And you have to be prepared to understand what's happening in each local regulation, each local jurisdiction, and then you build from there. But it's the idea that where people may have been on the maximalist side a couple years ago, I think the reality is coming in. I think you can't ignore what happened with FTX. You can't ignore Terra Luna. You can't ignore the lawsuits against CZ and Binance. If you do, that's to your own peril. But the idea is to start reading the tea leaves, to understand, to look at the numbers, look at the statistics, look at the lay of the landscape and say, how do I do this safely? How do I get involved? How do I continue to build opportunities? So if you start playing that out, what does that future look like? Now, this is a generic slide. I'm just going to have it up here for you for a little while. We'll talk a little bit. But it's this idea that if you're going to do it, what does it look like? So, like I said, right now you have 84% of the world who are still on cash. As you start to move that forward a little bit, we're not going to be tomorrow everybody on blockchain. It is another rail. It is a rail that has tremendous utility. It has a rail that has the ability for true disintermediation. But how do you play? How do you play with it? How do you build upon it? So again, I think you have to take that pragmatic lens, that there's going to be CBDCs. I believe the central bank in Brazil is expecting to release the one here at the end of 2024. You're seeing that in the United States. You're seeing that around the world. You're seeing people testing it. Now, whether it's going to be a CBDC, a stable coin, whether there's going to be some sort of regulated crypto, whether it's going to be the digital euro, whatever the case may be, it's another form factor. And you have to be prepared for all those things coming together. So to do that, and I'll step back from our side, you have to be able to do it in a safe and secure way. You have to be doing it in a way that there's not going to be those bridge protocol hacks. You have to do it in a way that you can trust your smart contracts. You have to do it in a way that capital markets aren't going to shudder every time there's another bad actor. Because to be clear, bad actors have been doing this for a long period of time. I can't go back to the 1940s, I apologize, but if you just start looking at more recent history, you look at the bond issues in the 1980s in the United States, you look at what happened in the dot-com crash, you look at what happened in 2008 with the global financial crisis, bad actors are going to do bad things. If they have an opportunity to take advantage of the system, they will. But if you actually start digging into what's going on right now, it is not people doing bad things with crypto in the sense that the crypto is bad or the chain is bad or there's something wrong with it. It's people doing bad trading. They are doing normal crimes. They are not being compliant. They are not sitting there doing the proper safety checks. They're not doing KYC, AML. They're allowing things to go wrong. They're taking advantage of the system. They're bad actors. So right now, as we shake them out of the ecosystem, I say good. It's a good time for them to go away. It's a good time for those people who are sitting there saying, well, I'm not sure if this is real, to go away a little bit. Because I hate to break it to you, whether or not you believe in crypto, it doesn't matter. Crypto believes in you. Blockchain believes in you. It's here. It's not going anywhere. So how do you engage? So again, you look at what's going on with just the global market cap of crypto and trading. How do you start engaging in that space? You need to look at your entire understanding holistically of what is safety and security. How do I understand the customer? How do I understand the counterparty I'm working with? How do I understand the exchanges that I have hooking into my system? And then you build from there those protocols of identity. You start layering in different things like risk monitoring, cyber risk monitoring. You bring in your fraud controls. And then you step back and you say, from a Mastercard point of view, we're looking at the issuing side, where we've launched products to protect the entire issuing ecosystem. We have to do the same thing for our merchants and the acquiring side as well. You have to look holistically across every single thing to facilitate safety. Now, why do I say all this? Where do I think it can go? I think there's a couple of good examples to bring into this. So the first one I was leading to, I'm a pragmatist, I'm a realist, I do love my Bitcoin, yet at the same time I recognize that everybody out there is engaging and doing payments in a different way. Now, what does the future look like? Is it going to be me pulling out my Mastercard at every interaction? Is it me pulling out my phone, tapping with my watch, blinking my eye, having my facial scanned? I'm not necessarily sure. All those technologies are in the mix right now. We're engaging, we're testing, we're playing, we're learning. Sorry, I'm speaking fast. If I do start talking too fast as a New Yorker, throw a shoe at me, let me know, I'll slow down. But is this idea that, how do you do it? What do you want to do? Well, my child's only 6 right now, so he just really wants to run around naked. But when you have a kid out there who wants to engage in the space and they want to play, and they're like, you know what, like mom, dad, I don't necessarily care. I just want to engage. I want to have my wallet. I want to buy, sell, trade. What does that look like? I think a future state, when I look at it from a Mastercard point of view, we have our payment rails. Infrastructure is hard. We have those. We have our card rail, our card network, real-time payments, account to account, ACH, P2P, P2M, all those different things, but now start layering them in. Layering blockchain as a rail. Layer in the idea that if I have a wallet, a digital wallet, I don't necessarily care potentially in the future where that's coming from. I simply care that I have a data piece in my phone that says I have funds available. I have money to spend. I may not care if it's a real. I may not care if it's a Bitcoin. I may not care if it's a picture of a Pokemon stamp. But if I can trade it, if I can exchange it, that's what matters. Now, how did it happen? At the end of the day, do most people care at home? No. The consumer wants access to it. They want to do it. They want to be involved right away. They want to know that it's theirs. But we're sitting there saying in the back end, okay, we have to make sure it's safe. We have to do all of our checks. We have to build the pipes in the background. We have to build the data orchestration layer so it all comes together. We need to build all the compliance checks, the safety systems, the anti-money laundering concerns so everybody can do it. Now, that's hard work. At the end of the day, the consumer wants a simple experience where all of it comes together. So when I look at a future opportunity, one of the things I look at, and I will take a Mastercard point of view, that's what I'm here to do for a little bit, is the idea that once we have the infrastructure, once we have these pipes, it's hard to replicate that. But what if we extend them? What if we extend and open up that franchise, those pipes, if you will, to say, if you want to exist on these rails, and by coming into our normal franchise, into our network, we expand the rules for all these other elements to plug in. and we can orchestrate all the components in the back end. It brings it together. Now, there's a vision of where you do that you have to know what a transaction is. That KYT, if you will. How do I understand a transaction safe, secure, compliant? We risk monitor it. We score it. We have our transaction scoring. Once that comes in, there has to be custody. Custody is somewhat boring, but it's a necessity in this space. It's infrastructure. It's pipes. It's network. And then from there, you need to have standards. Now, for those who are crypto natives, you shudder when I say the word standards. I don't mean that we're going to recreate PCI. We're not going to recreate EMVCO or anything like that. But what we can create are de facto standards of how you engage. What if the idea that every smart contract was risk scored, associated with where it had engaged in potentially risky behavior, a sanctioned entity, or at the same time you could understand where it violates any sort of SEC regulation or security regulation based on where you were. And that was a native score. Now all of a sudden entities know that that is safe to engage with. They're not going to get in trouble, and you build out de facto standards. Now that's a scenario where it comes together. Now, I want to get even a more specific example, and I'm going to give you a very future look. My future head of crypto, Kurt Sutton, and I were talking about this, and I give credit to him. He put it in my head. See him after the break. He's got great ideas. But we were talking about that. If you want to engage, if you want to do this, one of the things we're looking to do is, what's your entry point? A customer wants to buy, hold, sell crypto. They simply want to be able to do it. They want to touch it, feel like they're not missing out. They don't want to have FOMO. FOMO translates down here, right? All right. They want to do it. So if you allow them to buy, hold, and sell, if you allow them to go down that route, let's just skip to those ones. What's next? What's the opportunity? So now you as a traditional bank, you're offering buy, hold, sell. It's natively in your wallet. Somebody's engaging with it. You're in a closed loop ecosystem. What's the next step? What does the future look like? What are the opportunities? What's innovative out there? So you now have your account. You're doing buy, hold, sell. What if you attach a card to it? You attach that card that allows you to do transactions, but that money's not necessarily coming out of a checking account. It's coming out of your crypto account. It's going right to that. It's engaging. It's making you more digitally native that you can use your utility right there. You can use your coins in your wallet, in your crypto source account, as we call it, or your buy, hold, sell account, and then you're able to engage. But now how do you up-level that? What becomes the next step? What are the future opportunities? What if you, as a bank, you now say, all right, I understand that we're doing this, we're engaging, I have a secure method to allow my consumer to buy, hold, sell. I know the safety of the exchanges and the participants that are plugged in the back end through the Mastercard network. What else can I do? Well, I can create that digital wallet for my customer that has identity elements, that has the metadata, the tags, all those pieces to say I have a fully KYC'd AML person that wants to now engage in the future of commerce. Web3, metaverse, call it what you will, and I apologize, Dota for Meta's coming up next. I'm not trying to steal any of that thunder, but it's that idea of what does that future ecosystem look like? And I'm not talking about wearing your VR goggles and going out and playing a game or anything like that. I'm talking about actual engagement in a way that makes sense. So let me give you that example, that if you're sitting there, I now have my identity, my digital wallet associated with me from my bank that I can use in a Web3 property. Let's take in some real world scenarios. So let's say you're a gamer. I like to play Assassin's Creed on Xbox, I'm not gonna lie. I also like to play Madden. You can come at me at Brooklyn Rage, that's me. We can play some Madden. But it is this idea that if you're in there, you're an Xbox, I have my identity, and inside of my Xbox, I'm getting authenticated, I have my identity, my wallet, and inside there, I'm playing games, I'm getting tokens. I'm getting those Xbox tokens, my gamer tokens. Those are credits inside the Xbox store. Now, but imagine in this ecosystem, in this Web3 environment, while I have that wallet, I have those tokens in my wallet, which has the custody, which has the proper KYC to AML, what do I want to do with them? Or what do you, the bank, want to do with them? Say you go back to your customer and say, hey, I noticed that you have 150,000 of these tokens from Xbox and Microsoft. How about you trade them in as XYZ, and you can get dollars on those, and you, the bank, can go back, disperse them to the rest of your community in different ways, and give them as loyalty points or rewards, or allow your consumer to trade them out for different things. You're embedding loyalty natively in what you're doing. You're now creating an innovative layer for you to trade different assets that your consumer has that stays on your books because it's a wallet inside of the bank. But now that consumer can also say They can port their identity and their wallet over from their Xbox to their Nintendo Switch, to a Roblox, to anything else they're involved with, and we're simply talking about shifting the form factor. Now, that's a very specific use case, but I think it's important because a lot of times when you'll sit there in your talk, a lot of people have big ideas, and I get that. I like big ideas. I like strategy. I like putting big things out there. I think it's important. But when you step back a little bit, it comes back to what's actually going to happen. What's a use case that makes sense? Because at the end of the day, if you're a bank, you're an acquirer, you're a merchant, if you're going to be involved in this, there has to be an upside. Yes, you want to solve the pain point. There's always this conversation around if you're building a new product, is it pain medicine or a vitamin? I don't know about people out there, but after too many drinks in Brazil, I like my pain medicine. I do. My vitamins, not so much. I'm not sure the last time I took a multivitamin. My wife yells at me, but I haven't done it. But it's the idea that if you need to solve a pain point, you will. If banks are seeing customers take their paychecks and drop it in Kraken, drop it in Binance, drop it in Coinbase, they're going to take actions to stop it. But that's stemming the pain. Vitamins help build for the future. And once you find that opportunity of not just building resilience, but building opportunity, building the opportunity to grow GDP, grow your customer base, grow loyalty, create situations where now you can layer in different trading opportunities for the bank. You have different assets that you can move around. You're building in that next layer of innovation and creativity. And I'll be fair, I'm not a banker in that sense, but I am sure some of my smart investment banker friends will say if I have these assets, I can do 17 different things with it. It's about giving our customers, it's about giving the banks, the merchants, the acquirers, tools to grow in this new ecosystem. And now, I didn't get into it all about the end of the day making a payment. It didn't come out of my mouth, because I'm not there yet. I don't know what that necessarily looks like. At the end of the day, I do know it becomes important that a consumer pays with where they put their money. And you all know that, and you can track it. And if we're not moving in that direction and understanding how technology enables people to get there, we're going to fall behind. So as we embark in this journey, there's a lot of things that people are trying to figure out on their own, but also what do we figure out together? What do we figure out holistically to mitigate risk and build opportunity? I think that's the tremendous beauty of new technology in space. Once you get past the hype cycle and we go through the trough of despair, we start to climb the plane of productivity. That's where we're at now. So when you see that market cap coming up, you see customers trading, it's now time to build. It's building those products that they can use in the future that will lead to the benefit and safety of the ecosystem, but opportunity for everybody in this room. All right, that's it. Thank you. I appreciate the time. Hope to see everybody afterwards for questions.